Their arrogance would become the ledger of their undoing. Admiral Eva Rostova stood on the command deck of the UNS Resolve, her form a still shadow against the swirling star chart of the Viridia system. Outside the armored viewport, the planet hung like a blue-green jewel held hostage by the stark brutalist geometry of the Praxian hegemony fleet. The Praxians did not negotiate. They issued terms. Their ultimatum, a declaration of dominance wrapped in the language of honor, was already echoing across every civilian channel on the world below. A holographic timer floated beside Rostova's command throne, its crimson numerals stark against the cool blue light of the bridge. 5943. They demand the surrender of 212 colonists. Commander Jian Li stated, his voice a low, steady rumble that cut through the quiet hum of the bridge. Designated seditious elements for crimes against hegemony purity. The Praxian overlord Kalin guarantees safe passage for all others if Viridia complies. Guarantees are worthless from those who deal in threats. Rostova murmured, her gaze fixed on the enemy flagship, the Blade of Inevitability. It was a vessel designed to intimidate a jagged spear of dark metal bristling with particle lances. Solace, the fleet mind of the Resolve, manifested its presence as a soft, pulsing light on the main console. Solace confirmed their disposition. Are they postured for orbital bombardment or merely for a blockade? Their primary weapon capacitors are at 92% charge, Admiral. The AI's synthesized voice replied, calm and devoid of emotion. They are postured for overwhelming force application. Probability of compliance from the colony is 1.7%. Probability of Praxian action at the timer's conclusion is 98.9%. A low rumble of agreement vibrated through the deck plates. Rostova's jaw tightened. She hated ultimatums, the lazy tool of bullies who lacked the imagination for true strength. The United Nations Stellar Navy had a different doctrine, one forged in diplomacy and proven in the fires of necessity. They expect us to brawl or to flee. We will do neither. She turned to Li. Commander, status of the convoy tenders. Tenders 4 through 9 are holding Station 5, light minutes out, behind the system's primary gas giant. Li confirmed, tapping a sequence into his console. A tactical overlay shimmered into existence, showing the small, swift medical and supply ships as discrete green icons. They are shielded and running silent, awaiting your signal. We do not break. We find the seams and we unravel. On the planet below, in a small apartment in the capital city of Ethel, a young girl named Ilara traced the condensation on a window pane. She could see the alien ships as tiny, menacing stars that did not twinkle. Her father held her mother's hand, his knuckles white as the Praxian overlord's voice filtered through the city's emergency broadcast system, repeated its cold demand. The ultimatum was not just a threat. It was a promise of fire that felt like it was already sucking the air from the room. Ilara didn't understand the words, but she understood the fear in her parents' eyes. Back on the Resolve, Lieutenant Anya Sharma, the fleet's lead electronic warfare officer, looked up from her console. Admiral Overlord Kalin is broadcasting his terms on a wide, barely encrypted channel. He intends this as a public lesson. Every lesson can be taught in reverse. Rostova said, a faint, dangerous smile touching her lips. He wants an audience. Let's make sure they see the entire performance. She gestured to the main star chart. Solace, begin deployment of the Gossamer screen. Commander, signal the tenders. Operation Open Hand is a go. The galaxy does not reward the loud. It rewards the patient. Anya's fingers danced across her console, her expression one of intense focus. Ghost signals began to bloom across the Praxian sensor screens, faint and tantalizing. They were designed not as a direct assault, but as a question mark, a subtle anomaly that a prideful commander like Kalin could not ignore. The Praxians believed in direct, honorable confrontation, making them predictable. Their doctrine saw deception as a coward's tool, a flaw Rostova was preparing to exploit on a systemic scale. "He's taking the bait, Admiral," Anya reported a few minutes later, a tremor of excitement in her voice. "Two of his flanking cruisers are peeling off to investigate the ghost signatures at the system's edge. He thinks it's a probe, a test of his perimeter," Lee observed, stroking his chin. "He's swatting a fly." "Precisely," Rostova agreed. The console beside her chimed softly. A direct communication request from the Blade of Inevitability, on screen. "Overlord." Kalen's face filled the main viewer. He was a Praxian in his prime, his features sharp and avian, his face marked with ceremonial scars of rank. He sat on a throne of polished obsidian, his posture radiating contemptuous power. "Admiral Rostova, your fleet's presence is an insult. Your pathetic attempts at misdirection are an even greater one. Withdraw now or be unmade." "They believe strength is a sword. We know it is a fulcrum." Rostova met his gaze without flinching. Her own bridge was deliberately understated functional, and without ceremony, a stark contrast to his performative grandeur. "Overlord Kalen, your blockade of a civilian world is a violation of the intersystem accords. Your ultimatum is a crime. Let the colony be, and we can discuss a path to de-escalation." Kalen laughed, a harsh grating sound. "The hegemony does not de-escalate. It purifies. The countdown stands. Your weakness has been noted." The screen went black. A heavy silence settled over the bridge, broken only by the quiet hum of the life support systems. The countdown timer now read 07:12:21. "His arrogance is a tactical liability," Lee muttered. "It is his center of gravity," Rostova corrected him gently, "and we are about to pull it out from under him." She turned her attention to the tactical plot. "Solace, what is the energy state of the local star?" "The star is a G-type main sequence currently entering a moderate solar flare cycle. Coronal energy output is projected to increase by 12% over the next 8 hours. The solar wind is rich in ionized particles." "Perfect," Rostova said. Her plan was a delicate piece of machinery with many moving parts. The ghost signals were just the first turn of the key. The real mechanism was far grander, and the Praxians were not even looking in the right direction. She was not just planning to break a blockade, she was planning to rewrite the rules of engagement. "Hold the line but draw it in the sand." "Admiral," Anya interjected, her brow furrowed. "The two cruisers have completed their sweep. They found nothing as expected. But they are not returning to the main fleet. They are taking up new positions, extending the blockade line." "He's adapting," Lee noted, his tone grim. "He's not as stupid as he looks." "No," Rostova said. "He is disciplined. He is following his doctrine, which tells him to control all variables. A wider perimeter gives him more sensor coverage and a clearer field of fire." A new mystery for her crew. She had anticipated this, but she let them work through it. "What else does it give us, Commander?" Lee studied the holographic display, his eyes tracing the new enemy vectors. The two cruisers were now further from the planet, creating a vast empty corridor between them and Kalen's central force. He saw it then, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. "A gap, Admiral. A massive one." "Exactly. He thinks he's building a cage. In reality, he's helping us build the stage. This fleet teaches by numbers and remembers by ledgers, never by collars." The first part of Rostova's plan hinged on a piece of technology the Praxians had encountered before, but never understood: the mirror lattice. It was not a weapon. It was a network of thousands of small automated drones that could manipulate energy light and sensor waves with incredible precision. They could create decoys, blind enemy scanners, or in the right formation, focus ambient energy like a lens. The Praxians had dismissed them as elaborate novelties. Deploy the lattice, Rostova commanded. Primary formation, Delta. I want a full ghost fleet projected at the far end of that corridor Kalen so generously opened for us. A new set of signals went out. From the hulls of the convoy, tenders hidden behind the gas giant swarms of tiny drones were released. They were no larger than a human hand, inert and cold, coasting on momentum. They spread out, forming a vast, intricate pattern in the blackness of space, waiting for their cue. The void itself will become our shield. On Viridia, the doctor in the city hospital checked the charge on the last backup battery for the neonatal ward. The rolling brownouts had started an hour ago as the planetary government rerouted power to essential defense systems. The hum of the incubators was a fragile sound in the growing quiet. She looked out a reinforced window at the sky, at the cold, impassive stars of the Praxian ships. She prayed that someone was out there, someone who saw them not as bargaining chips, but as people. The countdown timer on the Resolve's bridge clicked past the 7-hour mark. 6:58:10. Lattice is in position. Admiral Anya confirmed, her voice tight with anticipation. Ready for activation. Activate, Rostova ordered, and start the music. Suddenly, the void erupted. Where there had been empty space, Praxian long-range sensors were now screaming with alarms. A full human battle fleet identical in energy signature to Rostova's own appeared to be warping in at the edge of the system. It was a perfect illusion, a phantom army crafted from light and radiation, every detail meticulously modeled by Solace. Every truth begins as a whisper. Overlord Kalen's bridge was thrown into chaos. Alarms blared. His tactical officers shouted contradictory reports. A fleet of that size appearing without a detectable warp signature should have been impossible. It violated the known laws of physics. His rigid, honor-bound mind rejected it as trickery, yet his sensors insisted it was real. Silence. Kalen roared, rising from his throne. Report, Lord! A massive energy spike. Confirmed hostile signatures. Human design. They are holding position, but their weapons are charging. Kalen stared at the tactical display, his avian features contorted in a sneer of fury. It had to be a trick. But his doctrine was clear: any potential threat must be met with overwhelming force. Leaving his main post to confront a phantom fleet would expose the planet. But ignoring it could mean letting a blade slip past his guard. Dispatch the second squadron, he commanded. Crush this illusion. I will not be made a fool. Never mistake caution for fear. 4 more Praxian warships, heavy cruisers armed with devastating plasma cannons, broke from the main blockade. They powered towards the phantom fleet, their engines leaving brilliant blue trails in the darkness. On the Resolve, Lee watched them go, a slow grin spreading across his face. He took the bait. 6 ships out of his 15 are now chasing ghosts, Lee said. The blockade around Viridia is significantly weakened. It's not weak enough, Rostova countered her, eyes still on the main plot. The timer read 06:45:03. He left his most powerful ships with him, including the Blade. A direct run by the convoy is still a suicide mission. She pointed to a specific point on the map, a region of space near one of Viridia's small, barren moons. Anya, I need a new illusion. Something smaller. Something they will believe is desperate. What do you have in mind, Admiral? A single transport ship, Rostova explained. Human-civilian registry. Damaged. Leaking radiation. Make it look like it's trying to break the blockade and flee the system. The account is opened, not with a bang, but with a choice. Solace immediately began processing the request, its logic circuits calculating the precise energy signature of a crippled vessel. A bleeding ship would be consistent with a failed attempt to run the initial blockade, the AI commented. The Praxians will interpret it as evidence of their success and our desperation. It will appeal to Overlord Kalen's vanity. Exactly, Rostova affirmed. Position the new decoy here. She indicated a trajectory that would take it directly across the path of Kalen's remaining command squadron. Let's see if he can resist finishing off a wounded animal. The mirror lattice, its primary task, complete, reconfigured. A fraction of its drones shifted, focusing their energy to project the new image. A lone, flickering signature appeared on Praxian screens, a civilian freighter venting plasma into the void. It was a pathetic sight, a story of failure and fear broadcast for all to see. A single crack can bring down a mountain. On the blade of inevitability, a sensor officer reported the new contact. Lord, a single transport broadcasting a distress signal. It appears to have been damaged in our initial volley. Kalen's lip curled. This was more like it. Not a phantom fleet, but a single terrified ship trying to escape his judgment. This was a victory he could understand, a tangible result. His honor demanded he make an example of it. The defiance of the human fleet would be answered by the utter destruction of this fleeing coward. Target the vessel. Kalen ordered, his voice dripping with satisfaction. One volley. Show them the price of running. Admiral Lee said, his voice low and urgent. He's targeting the decoy. His flagship and 2 escorts are turning to engage. Good, Rostova said calmly. Her eyes were fixed on the tactical display, watching, as Kalen's command ships reoriented themselves, their powerful main guns turning away from the planet Viridia. For a few critical seconds, their attention would be completely focused on a ghost. Solace, calculate the firing window. AI. The optimal window will be 3.2 seconds, beginning the moment their primary cannons discharge. During this window, their forward shields will be momentarily weakened, and their sensor focus will be narrowed to the target. Signal the convoy. Rostova commanded, her voice ringing with authority. All tenders full burn. Go. Now. This is the moment the balance shifts. 5 light minutes away behind the swirling clouds of the gas giant, the 6 convoy tenders came to life. Their engines flared, pushing them into a high-speed, silent run toward the now vulnerable planet. They were small, fast, and packed with medical supplies, food, and atmospheric processors. They were hope delivered at impossible speeds. The Praxian command ship fired. A lance of pure, white-hot energy crossed the void, striking the phantom transport. The illusion vanished in a silent, spectacular burst of static and light, perfectly mimicking a catastrophic explosion. For a moment, Kalen allowed himself a grim smile of satisfaction. It was a fatal mistake. Convoy is away, Lee reported, his knuckles white on the edge of his console. They are accelerating past the point of no return. Vector is clean. The Praxians haven't noticed. They will, Rostova said. Anya, how long until Kalen's sensors refresh and detect the tenders? 45 seconds, Admiral. Maybe 50 if we can add some noise to the system. Do it, Rostova ordered. Give that convoy every second you can buy. The ledger demands to be paid in full. The bridge of the Resolve was a study in controlled tension. Every officer was at their station, their movements precise and economical. The faint scent of ozone from the EW emitters filled the air. 40 seconds ticked by, an eternity of silence. Then the inevitable happened. Alarms on the Praxian flagship, Anya called out. They see the convoy. They see it. Kalen's roar of fury was so powerful, it could almost be felt across the vacuum of space. He had been tricked, humiliated. His flagship and its escorts began a clumsy, desperate turn, trying to bring their weapons to bear on the real targets, the 6 small ships now screaming towards Viridia's atmosphere. But their angle was wrong, their momentum working against them. They won't make it. Lee breathed, watching the vectors on the main screen. The tenders will be in atmospheric range before the Praxians can get a firing solution. Overlord Kalen is hailing us again, Anya said, her voice strained. He is not pleased. Ignore him, Rostova said, her eyes never leaving the tactical plot. His words are meaningless now. All that matters is the action. We will hold the door open. The 6 convoy tenders streaked into Viridia's upper atmosphere, their hulls glowing with the heat of re-entry. On the surface, civilian observers cheered as the streaks of light appeared in the sky, a sign that they had not been abandoned. The supplies and personnel they carried would be vital in the hours and days to come. The first part of Rostova's plan was a success, but it came at a cost. One of the Praxian cruisers from the outer perimeter, faster and more agile than Kalen's command ship, had managed to get into a marginal firing position. It fired a wild, desperate volley of particle beams. Most went wide, but one clipped the rearmost tender, the Starlight runner. On the bridge of the Resolve, they saw the ship's energy signature flicker violently. A red warning icon flashed on the main display. "Tender 6 is hit," Lee shouted. "Shields are gone. They're reporting hull breaches and casualties." The cost of victory, Rostova thought, always had to be paid. Her jaw set. "Get me a channel to the Starlight runner. Patch their triage officer through to our chief medical." This was the reality of command. You saved who you could, and you mourned the ones you couldn't. They sent an ultimatum. We sent a mirror. Kalen's rage was incandescent. He had been outmaneuvered, his authority challenged, and his blockade made a mockery of. His remaining ships, now regrouped, moved into a tighter, more aggressive formation around Viridia. The ghost fleet at the edge of the system had vanished, the trick revealed. He knew he had been played. His voice, when he finally broadcast on an open channel, was low and guttural, stripped of its earlier arrogance and replaced with cold reptilian fury. "Admiral Rostova, this changes nothing. You have sacrificed a ship for a foolish gesture. The dissenters will be delivered or this world will burn. The clock is still ticking." The timer on Rostova's bridge now read 05:30:12. But the tactical situation had been fundamentally altered. The first escalation was complete. Rostova had shown her hand, or so Kalen believed. He thought he had seen her best trick. He had no idea it was merely the overture. Solace Rostova said, her voice quiet. "He has concentrated his forces. He has pulled them in close to the planet, believing his strength is in proximity. That is a correct assessment of his current tactical disposition, Admiral. Begin Phase 2, Rostova commanded. The lattice is no longer a projector. It is now a collector. It is time to show Overlord Kalen what it truly means to be accountable for one's actions." A new reckoning was about to begin. The thousands of tiny mirror drones scattered across the system, in a carefully designed, seemingly random pattern, began to subtly reorient themselves. They were invisible to Praxian sensors, inert and cold. But each one was turning its mirrored surface toward the local star, preparing to gather its light, its heat, its raw, untamed energy. The trap was not the decoy fleet. The trap was the system itself. "Admiral, I'm detecting a strange energy pattern." Anya reported, her console displaying a complex waveform. "It's not us and it's not the Praxians, it seems to be ambient." "That's Solace running the tribute simulation," Rostova explained, letting her officers in on the next piece of the puzzle. "The lattice is gathering solar energy, but it's not for a weapon. Not a conventional one, anyway." The mystery began to dawn on Lee. "You're not planning to shoot at them." "The Praxians live by a doctrine of purification by fire," Rostova said. "They believe in overwhelming force. We are going to give it to them, but the fire will be their own. Learn what your enemy values, then show them the cost." The next few hours were a tense waiting game. The Praxians sat in their tight blockade, their guns trained on Viridia, waiting for the clock to run out. On the Resolve, Rostova's crew worked with quiet efficiency, monitoring the lattice as it gathered power and refining the final stages of their plan. The countdown continued its inexorable march towards zero. 040 so. 03 is Armawarku. In the Viridian capital, a civic leader addressed the population from a hardened bunker. "We have received the aid," she announced, her voice filled with a mixture of relief and defiance. "We will not surrender our people. We will not bow to tyranny. We stand with the UNS fleet. We stand for ourselves." Her words were a message of hope, but also a final, irrevocable rejection of Kalen's ultimatum. On the blade of inevitability, Kalen watched the broadcast, his face a mask of stone. The colonists' defiance, fueled by Rostova's small victory, was the final insult. His honor and the honor of the hegemony could only be satisfied now with purification. Their pride is the anvil. Our patience is the hammer. The timer reached 0:15 Zozaro. All elements are in place, Admiral. Lee reported, his voice steady. The lattice is at full charge. Solace has calculated the final vectors. We are ready. We are. Anya looked up from her station. I've also finished the communications override protocol, Admiral, as you requested. When you give the word, Overlord Kalen's internal ship comms and his primary broadcast channel back to the hegemony will be locked open. He will not be able to stop the feed. Rostova nodded slowly. This was the crux of it all. Not just to defeat Kalen, but to make him and his entire civilization witness the consequence of his ultimatum. The lesson had to be public. It had to be undeniable. The Praxian fleet is beginning to power its primary weapons, Solace reported, its calm voice cutting through the tension. They are targeting the capital city of Ethel as projected. Rostova looked at the timer. She took a deep breath, the recycled air of the bridge filling her lungs. She could feel the faint vibration of the ship's systems through the soles of her boots, a constant reassuring presence. She met Lee's gaze, then Anya's. They were ready. It is time to settle this account, she said. Anya, open his channels. Solace, on my mark, activate the tribute lattice. The mirror is about to show them their own face. The final seconds ticked away. Kalen stood on his bridge, his hand raised, ready to give the command that would incinerate a city and seal his legacy in fire. He was the instrument of hegemony, the purveyor of an inevitable justice. His universe was simple, ordered by strength and resolve. Zerzo Mon1. Mark, Rostova said, her voice as quiet as the falling of dust. Jochano. Kalen's hand fell. Fire. Across the void, the tribute lattice came to life. It was not an explosion. It was a sunrise. 1,000 points of light, the collected focused energy of a star, converged on a single point in space, the Praxian flagship. It did not strike the ship. It enveloped it. The blade of inevitability was suddenly bathed in the pure, unfiltered light of the system's sun, magnified 100-fold. It was a cage of light, a lens of impossible scale, focusing a star's power into a searing, inescapable glare. Every sensor on Kalen's ship was instantly blinded, overwhelmed by a flood of pure energy. His bridge was plunged into a dazzling, terrifying daylight. And then there was only light. Alarms screamed across the Praxian vessel, not of damage, but of system failure. Scopes went white. Sensors reported nonsense. The ship wasn't being destroyed. It was being deconstructed sensor by sensor, system by system, by the very light it was meant to travel through. On the bridge of the Resolve, the main screen showed the Praxian flagship, no longer a menacing spear, but a vessel trapped in a halo of its own making. The particle lances, having fired, saw their beams diffuse and scatter against the wall of photons rendered impotent. The energy intended for Viridia was harmlessly dispersed into the void. Overlord. Kalen stumbled back from his throne, shielding his eyes from the glare pouring through his own viewports. His command was gone. His control was an illusion. His ship was a prisoner in a cell whose bars were made of sunlight. "What is this?" he roared, his voice cracking with disbelief. "What sorcery is this?" His communications officer looked up, his face pale. "Lord, our comms. We can't shut them down. We are broadcasting everything across the hegemony on a dozen worlds. The feed from the blade of inevitability was playing on public screens. They saw their great overlord not in a moment of glorious victory, but in a state of blind, helpless confusion. They heard his panicked shouts, his officers' frantic reports. They were all witnesses. Then a new voice entered their channels. It was calm, measured, and utterly in control. It was the voice of Admiral Eva Rostova. Overlord Kalin, she said, her voice carried to his bridge and to his entire civilization. You issued an ultimatum, a demand for life to be paid as a tax. You believe in the cleansing power of fire. We believe in the clarity of light. A new timer appeared on Kalin's screen and on all the screens across his empire. This one was counting up. This light currently enveloping your ship is a mirror. It is returning a fraction of the energy your fleet's shields are emitting, amplified by the star you share. The more you struggle, the brighter it will become. The choice is now yours. The entire galaxy is watching. The camera feed on the Resolve's bridge shifted to show Rostova. She stood straight, her uniform immaculate, her expression serene. Before you lies a choice. Not for me, but for your own people to witness. Option 1, you can order your fleet to power down their weapons and shields, release their targeting locks on Viridia, and stand down. The light will fade, and your crew will be unharmed. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. Option 2, you can continue to fight. Your shields will hold for a time, but the energy they emit will be folded back upon you continuously until your systems cook from the inside out. Your ship will become your own furnace. This is not a threat. It is a calculation, a ledger. Rostova's eyes were like chips of ice. The ultimatum is now yours, Overlord. You have 60 seconds to decide. The accounting has begun. A tally will be kept. A balance will be struck. On the bridge of the Blade of Inevitability, the 60-second countdown pulsed in the corner of every officer's vision, a bleeding wound in their tactical displays. The glare from outside was a physical pressure, a silent scream of pure energy that made the air feel thin and hot. Sweat beaded on Kalin's brow, his ceremonial scars standing out starkly against his paling skin. Surrender was not a word in the Praxian lexicon. It was a concept for lesser beings, a stain upon honor that could never be cleansed. His tactical officer turned his face a mask of desperation. Lord, heat levels are rising past nominal. The primary heat sinks are at 110% capacity and climbing. We cannot sustain this. The human is bluffing, Kalin hissed, more to convince himself than his crew. She would not dare destroy a flagship. It would be an act of total war. With respect, Lord, the officer countered, his voice trembling. The light is not a weapon. It is a condition. It is our own systems that are destroying us. Their doctrine had no answer for this. Kalin stared at the timer. 32. 31. He saw the faces of his ancestors, the long line of overlords who had carved out an empire with fire and iron will. They had never backed down. They had never yielded. To do so would be to spit on their graves. His legacy would be one of shame. There had to be another way, a path through the fire. His eyes darted to the tactical display, showing his 14 other warships poised and waiting for his command. They were his sword. He would use them. All ships, Kalin roared, his voice broadcast across the open channel for his empire to hear. Target, the human flagship, the Resolve. Fire at will, break their concentration, show them Praxian honor. A shout into the void is still only a shout. On the bridge of the UNS Resolve. Anya Sharma's eyes widened. Admiral, he's ordering his fleet to fire on us. Lee's head snapped up. They are turning. Confirmed weapons lock from 12 Praxian cruisers. This was the final escalation, the petulant, violent lashing out of a cornered beast. It was the act of a commander who would rather see the entire board burned than admit defeat. Rostova had anticipated it. Solace had calculated the probability at 78.4%. It was the predictable death throw of a doctrine built on arrogance. He has made his choice, Rostova said, her voice devoid of triumph, filled only with a profound, weary certainty. Solace, reconfigure the tribute lattice. New designation, the reckoning. AI. Acknowledged, Admiral. The equation is being rewritten. All incoming Praxian weapon discharges will now be treated as assets. A great stillness settled over Rostova. The moment of restraint was over. Now came the righteous, terrible clarity of the consequences. Redirect all mirrors. The lesson is over. The bill has come due. They will pay it themselves. Deep in the medical bay of Ethel's largest hospital, a young UNS corpsman from the damaged Starlight Runner was applying a pressure dressing to the arm of a Viridian colonist, a man injured when a power conduit overloaded. The lights in the ward flickered, a constant reminder of the siege. Through a reinforced plasteel window, they could see the stars, the cold, distant points of the enemy fleet. The corpsman worked with practiced calm, but his heart was pounding. He and his patient both knew their lives depended on a battle being fought in the silent heavens above. The Praxian fleet unleashed hell. Lances of white-hot particle energy and globes of incandescent plasma erupted from their warships, crossing the void in a silent, vengeful wave. Their target was the Resolve, but they never reached it. Halfway to their destination, the waves of destructive energy struck the reconfigured mirror lattice. They did not scatter. They did not dissipate. They were caught bent and focused with impossible precision. The reckoning was not a shield. It was a lens for their own fury. Every joule of energy Kalen's fleet had just fired was redirected not back to the ships that had fired it, but to a single, inescapable point. That point was the bridge of the blade of inevitability. An echo is a reflection of sound. This was a reflection of power. Kalen watched the energy beams from his own ships converge on his position. For a fraction of a second, his mind refused to process what his eyes were seeing. It was a geometric impossibility, a nightmare of physics. The sunlight cage vanished, replaced by a vortex of his own fleet's making. The collected rage of 14 warships struck his flagship in a single silent, cataclysmic instant. The forward viewports of the blade did not shatter. They sublimated. A wave of pure heat and force tore through the command deck, erasing everything in its path. Overlord Kalen and his entire command staff were unmade not by a human weapon, but by the very honorable fire he had commanded. His last unheard thought was one of utter soul-crushing disbelief. The flagship's spine broke. Secondary explosions blossomed along its length as its power conduits overloaded. The proud vessel, the symbol of hegemony dominance, was transformed into a tumbling, silent ruin, venting atmosphere and memories into the cold vacuum. There is no honor in self-destruction. The 14 remaining Praxian warships ceased firing as one. Their captains watched in stunned horror as their own attack had annihilated their commander. The comms channels still open broadcast only the rising shriek of failing systems, and then a profound final silence from the flagship. They were leaderless, adrift in a sea of their own catastrophic failure. On the Resolve, the bridge crew stared at the main screen at the broken form of their enemy. The air was thick with the scent of ozone from the overworked EW emitters and the faint, coppery taste of adrenaline. No one cheered. The spectacle was too absolute, too chillingly perfect in its execution. The blade of inevitability is gone. Admiral Lee reported, his voice a hoarse whisper. The rest of the fleet is holding. They are not charging weapons. They are not maneuvering. They are broken, Rostova corrected softly. The cost of victory, she thought. A flagship full of souls vaporized by their leader's pride. It was a necessary outcome, but she would not celebrate it. Solace, did any of the energy bypass the lattice? Negative, Admiral. 0.01% of the initial volley was unaccounted for, likely dissipating as thermal noise. 99.99% was successfully redirected. Viridia was never in danger from the volley. Rostova nodded, a grim satisfaction settling in her chest. She turned to Anya. Open a channel to the remaining Praxian captains. All of them. A moment of silence can be the loudest sound. The channel opened. Rostova's face appeared on the main view screen of every Praxian warship. She did not look triumphant. She looked like a judge delivering a final, irrevocable verdict. Praxian commanders. She began, her voice calm and steady, echoing in the stunned silence of their bridges. Your overlord chose to escalate. He chose to answer a choice with violence. You have just witnessed the consequence of that doctrine. It is a doctrine that consumes itself. She let them absorb the statement. The ultimatum issued against Viridia is void. The blockade is over. You have two paths before you. You can return to your territory peacefully, and this engagement will be concluded. Or you can remain, and we will continue this lesson. The choice is yours. We will not fire first. They came to teach a lesson. Instead, they received one. There was no debate. There was no defiance. On the screen, Rostova Lee and the entire bridge crew of the Resolve watched as one by one the Praxian warships turned. Their movements were slow, hesitant, like wounded animals. Then in twos and threes, they initiated warp drives and vanished, leaving only the silent, shattered corpse of their flagship and the brilliant blue-green jewel of Viridia behind. The bridge of the Resolve remained quiet for a long moment. The tension that had held them all in its grip for hours finally began to recede, replaced by a wave of collective exhaustion and profound relief. The low hum of the ship's engines felt like a steadying heartbeat. Commander Lee Rostova said, her voice still quiet but firm. Damage report. Minimal. Admiral Lee replied, his fingers flying across his console. The final energy redirection caused a power surge in our own grid. We have 3 fried conduits on Deck 7 and minor plasma scoring on the forward shield emitters. Lieutenant Hesh reports 2 sprained ankles in engineering from the jolt. That's it. We held. A small price, Rostova thought. A manageable cost for saving a world. Begin coordinating with the Viridian government. They will need assistance with their power grid and medical support for the wounded from the Starlight Runner. And get our convoy tenders prepped for a second run. We have a planet to help rebuild. Anchor the line, then extend the hand. Anya swiveled in her chair. Admiral, a priority message coming through the Intersystem Tribunal channel. It's for the public record. She projected it onto the main screen. The text was simple, stark, and displayed on a format recognized across the galaxy as the official ledger of interstellar law. It was an amendment filed and ratified in the last few minutes, triggered by automated observation protocols that had monitored the entire confrontation. The intersystem accords were updated within the hour. Article 7, Section 4. The issuance of an ultimatum against a civilian population is now classified as an act of systemic self-aggression, forfeiting the issuer's sovereignty under the tribunal charter. Solis Rostova murmured. Add a copy of that to our logs. Title it, The Praxian Precedent. Aye, it is done, Admiral. The ledger is now balanced. Rostova looked out at the planet, now free and clear under the light of its own sun. She watched as the thousands of mirror drones, their task complete, cooled from brilliant silver to a dull, unassuming pewter, their mission of reflection fulfilled. She turned to Lee, a hint of a weary smile on her face. They thought strength was the weight of a hammer. They never understood it is the precision of the mirror. A hammer only breaks things, but a mirror forces you to see what you are breaking. It returns the consequence to its source. We did not defeat them. We simply showed them the ledger and let them settle their own account. Strength is not the will to destroy, it is the courage to reflect.